Deep in the forests of West and Central Africa, there are stories, whispers of a society that once moved through the jungle like the most feared predator on Earth. They weren't just hunters, they were something else. We're about to step into the shadowy world of one of Africa's most fascinating and mysterious secret societies, the Leopard Men.
This image right here gets to the very heart of their legend. Members were said to wear the skins of leopards, you see, but not just as a disguise. It was like they were putting on a mantle of terrifying power. So, were they just assassins hiding their identity? Or was it something more? The stories are all over the place, but they all agree on this one chilling image, a hunter that is both man and beast.
And really, this reputation was their greatest weapon. Some historical accounts call them warriors. Others describe them as a kind of local mafia, enforcing tribal law with deadly precision. But no matter what you called them, the name was always the same: the Leopard Men.
Okay, so to even begin to understand this society, you have to understand the animal at its core. Let's talk about the incredible power and symbolism of the leopard itself.
You know, the leopard isn't just another animal in the forest. It is the king of the bush. Its spotted skin is even said to represent the connection between the world of the living and the world of the spirits. Kings would wear its pelt as a sign of their absolute authority, while warriors looked at it as the ultimate example of a silent, deadly, effective hunter.
And this right here, this is the core belief that really powered the whole society. The Leopard Men wanted to do more than just act like the animal. Through secret knowledge and rituals hidden from everyone else, they believed they could actually channel the leopard's spirit, borrow its strength, its cunning, and its lethal precision for themselves.
Now, this belief, it fueled their actions, which were recorded in some pretty chilling detail. In the eastern Congo, which is where a lot of their activity was documented, the society actually had a local name, the Anyoto.
Anyoto. We don't have absolute proof of where the word comes from, but that possible connection to the word scratch is just incredibly powerful. It really grounds this almost mythical society in the very physical, very violent act that was so central to their methods. This was their signature move. A victim would be found with these horrific wounds, deep gashes and mutilations that looked exactly like the claws and teeth of a leopard. For the colonial authorities, and even for some locals, this created a terrifying uncertainty. Was this just a wild animal, or was this something far, far more deliberate? And these attacks weren't just random acts of violence. No, they were carefully planned rituals. An attacker, or more often a whole team, would first knock a victim unconscious with a club. Then, they'd move the body to a secluded spot for the ritual mutilation. And finally, they'd stage the scene, leaving behind fake leopard tracks to complete the whole illusion.
Their ingenuity was just terrifying. The actual killing was often done with a simple knife, but the real genius was in the deception. They made these iron claws to tear flesh, they carved wooden batons to stamp perfect leopard prints in the dirt, and they even wore special shoe soles to hide their own footprints. This wasn't just murder, this was calculated, psychological warfare.
But these elaborate, terrifying attacks didn't just happen in a vacuum. The rise and fall of the Anyoto is tied directly to one of the most disruptive periods in African history: European colonialism.
This timeline tells you so much. It looks like the society first pops up as a way to resist slave traders, but its activity really peaks in the 1920s and 30s, which is exactly when Belgian colonial power was trying to lock down its control. And then, it's the colonial authorities themselves, with their mass trials and public executions, that finally caused the society to just fade away.
So the Belgian colonial authorities saw the Anyoto as barbaric savages, irrational cannibals, a subversive threat to their whole civilizing mission. But today, historians see it really differently. They see a system of local justice, a political tool for keeping local power, and even a form of early anti-colonial resistance, what some have even called social bandits.
The historian Alan F. Roberts just summed it up perfectly. What looked like total chaos and savagery to the Belgian colonists was, if you looked at it from another point of view, a system of order. A violent and secret system, for sure, but a system all the same, enforcing laws and power structures that the colonial government was actively trying to wipe out.
So, working inside this colonial pressure cooker, what were the specific reasons the Anyoto even existed? Well, the answer is way more complicated than you might think, and it really brings us to the biggest question of all: why?
Yeah, the Anyoto weren't just one thing. They were a tool. A local chief might hire them to punish a rival or enforce a judgment that the colonial government would never recognize. They were a secret police force, an instrument for personal revenge, and, as we've already seen, a form of resistance. Basically, they were a shadow government operating completely outside of official control.
But beyond all the politics, there was a deeply ritualistic purpose. A lot of accounts point to something called the Borfana, a sacred medicine bag. To keep its power strong, the society believed it had to be fed with human life. This gave a really powerful spiritual justification for what was, on the surface, a political killing.
Enjoining was no small thing. Initiates were usually young men, and sometimes they had to prove their loyalty by sacrificing one of their own relatives. They swore an oath of absolute secrecy. And to break that oath, that meant death, not just for you, but maybe for your entire family. It was this bond of terror that made sure the society stayed hidden in the shadows.
So even though the Aniato themselves have pretty much faded into history, their story just continues to fascinate us, and that lasting power comes right back to the powerful symbol they chose for themselves.
By becoming the leopard, the Aniato weren't just putting on a disguise. They were tapping into this deep well of cultural meaning. They were making themselves a physical manifestation of a chief's power, of the spirit world, and of a wild, untamable Africa that existed completely beyond colonial control. And that had a huge psychological effect on everyone, local and colonist alike.
I just love this proverb. It perfectly captures what the leopard is: elusive, powerful, mysterious, and in the end, impossible to fully control or understand. And by embodying this, the Aniato made themselves just as difficult to pin down.
Of course, this really complex history got completely flattened in Western pop culture. The Aniato became these cartoon villains in stories like Tintin and the Congo and Tarzan and the Leopard Men, which just cemented this racist stereotype of African savagery and totally ignored the political and social realities we've been talking about.
And that brings us to our final thought. The story of the Leopard Men isn't just about a specific time and place. It's really a gripping case study in power, justice, and resistance. It asks us a question that's just as relevant today. When a way of life is under threat from an outside force, what lines get crossed in the fight to hold on to it?